Welcome again as we continue our look at the book of Proverbs, picking up today in chapter 11 where we left off, and we're at verse 9. And I think you'll notice that there is kind of a theme that will develop through these verses that we look at, because the emphasis is primarily upon the words that we emit, how we speak, and how we interact verbally with other people. When I was a kid, we had a saying, "Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me." But what we found out is that oftentimes words may not hurt initially as bad as a stick and a stone, but they have a lingering power. The stick can hurt and the pain goes away after a while, but words that strike us in certain ways can be something that we carry with us the rest of our lives. For example, if you had a parent who always belittled you and called you stupid, and or other kids at school made fun of you because of something that was unusual or unique to you, that kind of hangs with you and it kind of hangs over the top of your head. I'm almost like a companion on your shoulder who continues to whisper that into your life for the rest of your days. It's interesting because we also have another saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But what's interesting is in the Arabic world, where they're not allowed to use pictures to depict other things, plants and animals and gods and so forth, and people, they have a saying that says a word is worth 1,000 pictures. In other words, they said that words, have a great more power than we give them. And so that's really kind of along the line of what Solomon is saying here. In verse 9, he says, "With his mouth the godless destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge the righteous escapes." In other words, we know that there are people who will use words in a way that can be extremely harmful and damaging to us. And part of the exhortation is that we need to be very conscious of what we say. You know, so a lot of times there are people who speak pretty harsh or pretty in a very blunt or hard way, an aggressive way, and it's something that they've just grown up habitually with. In other words, a lot of times when a group of men get together, they may tease each other and say all sorts of things that if women were doing that would have been taken deeply personal. So we realize that the words of men are a lot heavier in the ears of women than vice versa. But at the same time, we have to realize that there's a responsibility to be thoughtful about the words that come out of our mouth, because Jesus himself used a lot of word pictures, and it was for many of those word pictures that they wanted to kill him. And so and it says, in fact, in John 5, for this all the more reason they tried to kill him, basically because he called God his Father, making himself equal with God. So when Jesus looked at him, he said, "What of my works that are you condemning? What do you want to kill me for that I've done?" And their response was, "We don't want to kill you because of what you've done. We want to kill you because of what you said. You made yourself equal with God by your words." And of course, one of the things that they were a little afraid to own is the fact that his teaching had so much more impact and was so much more desired, highly desired by the people, that as a consequence, they were losing their audience. And so it was his words that they were most afraid of. And so I think in the same way, as we look at this age that we're in now, right now, the cultural dynamic where we find many leading politicians and journalists and media types are casting out all sorts of very harsh words. I mean, they're calling people like Trump or Charlie Kirk or even myself, we're Nazis, we're fascists, we're haters, we're Hitler-like people. And they say these things knowing that they are designed to create an impression and to create chaos in your life. And that's why he goes on and says, with his mouth, the godless destroys his neighbor. And so we see that dynamic writ large today in this word where the spoken media is pretty much everywhere. The internet and television and everything carries that information everywhere. We find that the use of words has become a very powerful weapon. And at the end of the day, you realize, for example, let me give you a historical example that may relate. In 1095 AD, Urban II, the Pope, basically gave a message in saying that the Christian knights should go and liberate the Holy Land. And the consequence, it led to another 150 years of crusades, some 8 crusades, where knights were going from Europe and invading the Middle East to take the land back. And we can have a debate about how right or wrong that was, but it's so amazing that so many lives were changed and affected and ended basically because one man with a voice of authority told them we should go and speak. And so I think we need to understand that there's an authority in our words that sometimes we greatly underestimate. Well, I'm going to stop here. We'll pick this up tomorrow. God bless you and go in His grace.